Anyway, thank you very much for tuning into this channel again. I really appreciate it. And I've said that before, but I do. I really appreciate it. So do you want me to shoot ahead with questions, sensible ones now?
By all means, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
When
can, I'll
did
see
you
if I can
first
answer them.
beat your champion father?
That is a good question. It was a kind of slow process. What he used to do was to play me at odds. The first time, when he first started, he gave me queen odds, and he used to beat me. And then I got better, and I could beat him at queen odds. So then he gave me rook odds, and so on. But the first game, the breakthrough for me against him was in a competition. I was about 13, and I managed to draw with him. That was the first achievement. And then later on, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I did beat him then a few more times. When I got kind of 18, 19, I started to beat him in various competitions. We had some good games as well. He draws and he won the odd one. But generally, from that moment on, once I'd broken through, I started to beat him in most competitions or draw. I very
Oh,
rarely lost.
fantastic. What's your favourite opening for white, Paul?
Well, I've gone through phases on this, really. When I first started playing, I always played e4, and I enjoyed e4 a lot. Then I decided to experiment with d4 and c4 and went through playing with those. But lately, I've reverted back to e4 more. I'm quite enjoying playing e4 and playing the sharper lines again, and not the maneuvering games you tend to get with d4. I sometimes prefer a bit more of a skirmish, you know.
And your favourite opening for black?
Favorite opening for black? Well, I have always, for many years, started off playing e5 against e4, and that opening, I achieved some good success. The only thing against very strong players, it's quite difficult to win, and they tend to get a niggling advantage if you don't watch it, and they're very strong. And I've lost quite a few games where I've just been slightly worse, and they've punished me eventually. But e4, e5, I've relied on, but I've also played Sicilian as well, and I play the Sicilian quite a few times when I feel that I want to try and win against somebody, and I'm playing a player I feel I should be able to win. I like to try the Sicilian and force them to consider their possibilities and just play as best I can. So Sicilian against d4, though, that's been varied. My most successful opening has been either Nimzo Indian or King's Indian. It really depends what I'm feeling like. I've won some nice games with the Nimzo Indian. The King's Indian, the great thing about the King's Indian is I think it is probably inferior for black. If white plays incredibly accurately, as Petrosian said, if I can't win when I play against the King's Indian, I might give up chess. He always felt he should beat the King's Indian. But having said that, you know, Kasparov, Fischer, they all play it, and it's a very tough opening. The great thing about the King's Indian is you can lose your whole queen side, but that white king can get mated over on the. There's a famous game, I think, for Tashnik Svitan or something. I can't remember how you pronounce his second name, but Cvitan, I think. But it's a famous game where the Tashnik is killing him on the queen side, but he produces a beautiful mating combination on the king on the black side from the black point of view, and it's a fantastic game. And that's the whole point about the King's Indian. You know, if you lose your queen side, you're only losing material. If you lose your king side, you're dead. You know, dead. That's the point. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. I love the King's Indian to play here and there, and I like what Gary Kasparov does with it, with the F5 moves and the knight H5 move he plays too. Hey, yeah, so that's great. That's awesome. Thank you for that information. But that sounds like Alexander Alekhine Because he would have blinkers on with the centre, wouldn't he? But he's attacking your king on the king side.
Absolutely. He was a brilliant kingside attacker.
So, what's your longest game? And please don't be the longest answer because the time clock's already going down. And I've asked about three. There you go. I'm not trying to say anything like tell you off or anything.
I think it's about 100 moves. I
Okay.
can't remember exactly. Sometimes the games have ended, the games have ended with time scrambles and playing lots and lots of moves, and you don't actually know exactly how many moves it was.
Oh, yes. If you could wave a magic wand and magically appear at any chess match in history, what would be that game?
Fischer Spassky.
Which one?
1972, the World Championship match.
So you'd want to watch the whole thing. Oh, that's fair enough.
Absolutely.
If you could wave the same magic wand, who would you most like to play and why?
Mikhail Tal. Just to see whether I could cope with his tactics. Great player. He is actually the player I admire most of all the players. I admire Tal most. I think he was brilliant.
Well, why don't you say his games then? His World Championships.
The Fischer Spassky match was iconic, and it's made such a big impression on me. I was 16 years old at the time, and it made a huge impression on me to be there and to see the tensions between the Russians and the Americans and Fischer and so on. I would have loved to have seen that.
Brilliancy prize, should it be a positional crush or a tactical crush? Brilliancy prize.
Tactical.
Good answer. What do you consider your 5 most important things in life to be? What are the 5 most important things in life for you?
Wife, family. Perhaps that's 1.
Yeah.
Or 2.
I thought so.
Being comfortable financially. Enjoying life to the full, doing hobbies to the full.
Yeah.
And basically seeing as much of the world as possible.
You've done that, though. But there's probably more coming up, I'd say. How do you approach more than one serious game a day?
How do I approach it?
Yes.
That is a tough one. If possible, I prepare for both of them if there's time. But if there isn't time, you just have to wing it and just do the best you can. I don't do anything special. If I'm playing in an open tournament where there's, say, 2 or 3 rounds a day, even have played in the past, you just take each game as it comes. You have no time to prepare. So you just hope that your preparation you've done for your openings, etc., in the past is enough.
Do you do anything in between, though, Paul, the game? Like, do you find anything helps your game to...
Well, I relax. I mean, normally there's time, it's a meal time or something between a game.
Oh,
so
yes.
you have a chance to calm down, relax. I don't try and do anything intensive.
Is there a player you would least like to lose to? Me?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, me.
I've lost to lots and lots of players in the past. Least like to lose to is a good question because
yeah, I made it up.
It would have to be some complete idiot. And I don't count you as that, David. There you are.
Is there a player you would most like to lose to?
What, past or present, or
anytime? It can be any time.
I would love to lose to Fischer.
What part of the game do you like most?
I like the tactical battles, the skirmishes, and trying to outplay my opponents in the middle game. That's my favourite part of the game.
Okay. Do you primarily sit at the board, Paul, or do you wander around?
Well, when I was younger, I made the mistake sometimes of wandering around too much. I now very rarely get up. I primarily sit at the board. So I'm trying to concentrate because I'm not as good as I used to be at concentration and calculation. I try and use my opponent's time as well to look at the game and to think.
Yes.
And it gives me a bit more time to concentrate on things.
I say at the start of a game of most match games or rapids or so, have a good game. What do you do? Do you do anything like that? Have a good game?
With my opponent?
Yeah.
I just shake hands and say, let's enjoy the game. Have an enjoyable game.
Oh, yes. Sorry to interrupt. Do you believe it's best? Do you believe it's best to be well dressed for the game?
I like to dress sensibly, but I don't like to look scruffy. For instance, I wouldn't want to turn up at a game unshaven, dodgy clothes, etc. I like to look sensibly dressed, basically. It's not like the old in the past when they used to turn up with jackets and tie. I don't necessarily do that nowadays, not at all. I quite, funnily enough, in the Oxford and Cambridge match, they now hold it at the RAC, between the two universities. And that match, the RAC insist on jacket and tie. It's the RAC club in London. And they actually look quite smart, I have to say. The game between these youngsters playing jacket and tie, it's rather nice actually to see that match. Very, very enjoyable match. But I don't worry about that. I just try to look reasonably sensible.
You just play with your prowess, don't you?
Well, I hope so, yes.
Now, one of these trivia questions, because that's about life, the things that I asked the other day, it's about life. Ultimate question to the ultimate answer. And please, of course, brace yourself. Do you prefer to eat with a spoon or a fork or chopsticks or hands? Chopsticks, spoon, hands, or my father used to like eating with his hands sometimes, like chicken. Spoon, fork, chopsticks, hands.
Fork.
Do you like movie Erin Brockovich, or have you seen Erin Brockovich?
I have seen it. It was okay. I didn't think a great deal of it.
What do you think of New Zealand's movie The Dark Horse? Have you seen that movie?
I've not seen it.
You need to see it. It's about Genesis. He's the If it's some more trivial, if it's your last meal, what would you have?
Chicken tikka masala.
Is that right?
Yes, I love it.
Have you ever copied?
Sorry.
When your opponent plays the grobs or something like that and you're black, have you ever copied your opponent as black?
No. I like to unbalance it straight away. Mike Basman used to play things like the grob and things against me, and I always responded in the center traditionally to try and say to him, look, you can't get away with this rubbish playing crimside moves like G4 and B4, you can't get away with those moves. And I managed to smash him once with black using just central play.
Have you listened to Chess the Musical, or have you gone to it?
I have gone to it. Recently, I went with my daughter to a type of revival. She likes it, and Michael Ball was in it, and it was very, very good. I have to say they were brilliant, the actors, because they played out the game Kasparov against the guy beginning with T, Topalov. That famous game, Kasparov-Topalov, it was played out on the stage, and they remembered all the moves. I was very impressed.
Oh, wow. That's a bit scary. Who are your heroes, Paul? Who are your heroes? Just general heroes.
Um, it's a funny question, that, because I mean, my hero has always been my mum. Uh,
Yeah.
I think generally, I don't really have any heroes, I would say, as such. Otherwise, I admire lots of people, like Magnus Carlsen, for example. Uh, some of the brilliant bridge players in the world, I admire them, but I wouldn't have said they were my heroes.
Oh, good. Of the four knights on the chessboard in any given game, which knight do you think you would back in a race?
I think the white knight, the Queen's knight, because it tends to stay back a bit and will probably come at the end. The trouble with the white King's knight and the black knight on the Queen's knight, and even the F knight, they get exchanged very quickly. But the white Queen's knight is often there at the end, and it can do the final blow.
Goodness sakes, for you to answer that question like that, you must do a lot of thinking.
Not at all.
Yasser asks his pieces if they're okay. Do you have any similar concepts or techniques in your games or views about that?
That was Yasser Saran, was it? Did you say?
Yeah, I don't dare say his actual surname.
Yes, I understand. What he's doing, he's looking at the board, he's saying, this piece isn't doing much. And I have to say there's something in that, because I played against Tukmakov at Hastings, and I had a badly placed knight, and I never improved the position of that knight, and I lost. And immediately after the game, a strong player said to me, you should have maneuvered that knight. That knight needs to be in a better square. If it comes to a better square, you're at least equal. And he's right. Sometimes you must look at pieces. There's another game I remember with Fischer where he had a knight on B3 and he realized it was misplaced. So he took it to D2, to B1, to C3, and to B5 in almost successive moves. And when it got to B5, it was doing well. It was the ability to recognize that some pieces need to be repositioned. There was another famous game with Nimzovich where he had a knight on G3. It wasn't doing much. So at knight H1, right? And then knight F2, then knight H3. And when it got to G5, it killed black. So it's spotting sometimes these pieces that need to be repositioned is quite important. Yeah.
I've just come up with another question because it's one of the things I've got. But do you have a signature move like Magnus has 8 or Kasparov has H4? Do you have a signature move?
Not really. No.
Okay, that's fair enough. I like to play.
I have some variations I play, but I'm not going to tell you what the signature move is because it's a bit of a secret.
Oh, good. Well, I don't want you to tell your secrets. That's one of the questions, but I'm not going to ask you that one because it's a secret. But I play A4 a lot as white, just to throw my opponent off and go, "What the heck's that all about?" You know.
What? On move one?
No. Well, you can. You can play the crab opening or something. Anyway, back to the seriousness of this. By the way, my Kiwi mate did the trivial questions in about 3 minutes.
Right.
Do youngsters ever come up to you and go, "Wow"? Do youngsters come up to you at a chess tournament asking you for a game?
I have had that in the past, but more in the past than now. Nowadays, they look at me and think, blimey, he's an old man, isn't he? He's not going to be up to much. But in the past, I did get that, yes, occasionally. And occasionally, I, as a youngster, would ask a stronger player, can you look at this game? Can we have a game? Can we do this?
Yeah.
And very occasionally, they would, get involved, which was nice.
Wow, that's really nice. Yes. Electric or petrol car?
Petrol.
Oh yeah, petrol head. I actually plan in 5-minute and 3-minute chess. Is that going a bit too far? 5-minute and 3-minute chess to plan in it?
To planning is difficult, but 5-minute chess, you've got probably enough time to do a little bit, but 3 minutes, it's almost instinctive. Because if you take too long, you're in trouble. Just for a bit of fun, you mentioned youngsters playing me. I did a presentation recently, and youngsters were there. And afterwards, I played the youngsters, and I gave them. I think they had 5 minutes, and I had 3 minutes. And in every game, I got into time trouble. There was one game where I was winning, and I just thought for 30 seconds, and that was it. I lost on time eventually. You really, it's at 3 minutes. I think it's mainly got to be completely instinctive. And you hope you're right.
A real topical question in New Zealand and maybe elsewhere is this. It's a bit silly, but what do you prefer, again, jandals or thongs?
What's a jandal?
Flops. Jandals are flip-flop and the thongs are the other things that...
Jandals.
It might be a New Zealand question. Right, we'll just get rid of all this. There's a bit of paraphernalia here. In your opinion, Paul, what's more important, knowledge or understanding?
Well, understanding is most important, but you need that knowledge to understand things. It's a tricky question, that, because they're both interlinked, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so.
I saw a quote from Isaac Newton, which was fantastic. He said, "We know only a drop. There's a huge ocean out there." And
yeah,
if that comes from him, you probably knew more than most people, you realize how tough it is. It's difficult.
Yes. And your opinion is intuition learned or innate? Intuition learned or innate?
Innate mainly, but
good.
I also think you can train yourself. You can train yourself to improve it.
What piece do you most like?
The knight.
That's funny. That answers all the time. By the way, there's more on the knight coming up soon. What piece do you least like?
The rook. I'm not so fond of the rook.
Well, okay. Is that because he's not usually I'm sorry, I said he. Is that because the rook's generally not really in the middle game? Is it generally?
Indeed. Generally not. And also, I'm not very good at rook and pawn endings. So that's another thing. I drew a critical rook and pawn ending. I was winning once, and they're tough. So I've always have this bad memory of the rook.
Now, this question pops up a lot. This question even pops up for Magnus Carlsen. Explain in your own words how a knight moves on the chessboard. You're a scientist, come on.
2 up and 1 across, or 1 up and 2 across?
That's how I do it too. Well, I say it in an L shape,
Indeed.
And I said, I can get in trouble for this, but chess players can't count. White and black are 2 moves, aren't they? Not 1. I get in trouble of saying that's not. When you get asked the question, how many moves can you look ahead? You're always saying it to the layperson incorrectly. When they say, how many moves can you look ahead? Do not count white and black as 1 move, because they're just thinking they're 2 moves. So if you sit there and say, I can look 10 moves ahead, they think, wow, whoop-de-doo. But if you say to them, I can see 20 moves ahead, which is 10 times 2, white and black. I got in trouble for that the other day as we were talking on the street to a local chess champion here in Dunedin, and I got in trouble for saying that. He said, "Well, that's not the way it." Yeah, of course it's. Yeah. Anyway, what do you think?
Well, the standard is just to look from one side. That's the standard way people talk about it, and the way I've always looked at it. But I see your point. But
Yeah, for a
you tend to say,
layperson,
you're looking at white moves. Say if you're looking at white ahead, you're looking 10 moves of white ahead, knowing what the response would be. But it's just a standard way we do it, I think. There's nothing you can get into trouble about. It's just a logical way of doing it.
I did with him. I did with him.
Oh, wow. That's the more important things to get into trouble about, but there we are.
Well, it might be because the certain person is a mathematician and older than me. So, touch move or clock move, which do you prefer?
Touch move.
Increments or no increments, which do you prefer?
Increments.
Thank you very much thus far. What happens if, and I'm going to ask a scientist a question about science or physics. What happens if an immovable object meets an irresistible force?
Huge, huge tension, smash up. Usually when you're talking to your wife, but she might not agree.
Okay, I can relate to that. Which do you like best, social or serious chess?
Serious.
Do you like absolute quiet at the board or easy going about it?
I'm relatively easygoing. I prefer it to be quiet, but I'm not easily. Having been one of 7 children, you're used to cacophony around you, and you get used to kind of dealing with that. So it doesn't bother me so much. Some people are incredibly sensitive, but I'm not.
In your opinion, Paul, what do chess clubs miss out on? In England also, not New Zealand.
Well, it's a tricky question because it depends on the chess club. Some chess clubs, I don't think, stretch their players enough. And a chess club is not sufficient to stretch a person. You need to branch out from the chess club to really do well, playing competitions and so on. But I think a chess club is a very, very good starting point for any player. And it's very, very helpful, especially something chess clubs sometimes don't do very well is include juniors. And I think if they could include juniors, that's very important because I started off going to a chess club with my father and I was only 12 years old. But to be fair, I was probably one of about 3 juniors there. And in fact, often I would be playing adults all night. So it's encouraging juniors to get involved. And I think chess clubs perhaps are not very good at that. Although I know there are chess clubs now which are formed purely for juniors. I went to one recently, and that's great to see the juniors being encouraged.
To the outstanding chess administrators, a little bit similar to that, and arbiters, what can they do to better the environment for chess, if anything?
Well, I think as long as I think they should be understanding of the chess players' situation. They have to be firm. They have to be sensible. But I don't like this ruling with an iron hand kind of arbiter. I think they've got to be sensible, flexible, and just encourage us at the chessboard, but be firm. I mean, I played in the English Championship over 65s recently, and the arbiters were great. They just did their job. They were there when something was needed, but they were very friendly, and that's important, I think.
So, what about cost of subs? How are they over in the England area? What are cost of subs like in a club?
Frankly, I think they're pretty reasonable. They're I don't think there's. I haven't actually. Funny enough, I am not, strictly speaking, I'm not a member of a chess club that I go to regularly nowadays.
Yeah.
But my experience is that the chess clubs are pretty reasonably priced these days.
Women in chess, if I can say that pronoun, what, if any, needs to improve to attract them to a club?
But for ladies,
Yeah.
well, I feel quite strongly about this. I think the trouble is that we segregate ladies and men too much. I think at the end of the day, it's a game of the brain. Now, therefore, really, we should all be competing on an equal balance. It's a controversial view, but when I say this to ladies, they say, well, the girls feel a bit, intimidated by the boys and they want to play chess on their own. I say, well, no, we've got to encourage them to mix and so on. And then hopefully you should see an increase in the standard of ladies, and they'll be able to compete with men on an equal basis. I mean, in terms of brain, I think we'd all agree that women have just got as good a brain as men. It's just a question of, therefore, attitude, in my opinion.
What's your favorite immortal game and why, Paul?
Well, there are a few that come into this, but some of the brilliant games by Tal, a lot of the games by Tal, sometimes the combination wasn't 100% sound, but he would put pressure on his opponent, and the pressure, that's what it's all about, chess, face-to-face with humans. It doesn't work with computers, of course, but with humans, we put some tension, some pressure on them. And the brilliant game when he beat Botvinnik, Tal, is an example, a fantastic example. The other game is the Kasparov against Topalov. What an amazing game that was, with the fantastic combinations. And then one of the games I've always admired, and I think it's absolutely beautiful, and I think we mentioned it last time, is the Fischer-Spassky, possibly the 6th game of the match, when he beat him. And at the end of the game, I believe Spassky got up and applauded, because it was such an amazing game. And he complete control, and the sacrifice came out of the needs of the position. Just a beautiful game.
So did you know currently, you know this obviously, currently chess is one of the only sports platforms where women and men can meet? Your comments?
I don't think that's 100% true. It does happen in bridge. It tends to mind games. I think mind sports it can happen in. You're quite right, but it's very, very difficult to happen in a physical sport because, physically men are stronger, and that's a well-known fact. So it's difficult in a physical sport. But mind sports, I think there are competitions where women and men can compete. But they don't do enough of it, in my opinion. It's this segregation, I think, is a bad thing. I think in poker, there's some great women poker players, aren't there? I believe. I've seen poker tournaments with women playing against men, and it doesn't seem. It seems quite reasonable to me that women should compete with men in these mind sports.
What part? Do you like Faulty Towers?
Yes.
What part of it do you most like and why?
Just the silliness of it.
Can you impersonate anyone?
Can I impersonate anybody?
You heard me.
You're looking at me, kid?
Clock, fast, or classic play? You've answered that. Have you? Do you like fast chess? Classic.
Classic play. I prefer.
It's dying out, by the way. Have you? And the clock's at 4:14. Have you ever cheated in chess, even when you were young?
No.
Good on you. I did. When I was about 15, I went to the bookstall, and I never.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I told our arbiter here in New Zealand. And he said, I won't hold it against you. It's archaic too long ago, but it taught me a big lesson. Anyway, further to Has the human creativity vanished from the game? Or is it vanishing?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, in opening preparation, you can use computers a lot, and that can help a lot and find ideas. But there are still some very creative games out there. There was one I saw last year. I think it won the Game of the Year, and it was a beautiful sacrifice by one of the top players. Not Duda, I think it was another guy. I can't remember. Yeah, but it was a brilliant game, and that was creative. It was amazing. He sacrificed his queen. It was a wonderful game. So there's still room for creativity when we're playing, especially over the board. When you're faced with that, there's no chance of any computer or whatever helping.
So do you consider you work at the move, or are you intuitive in your move? Which do you think you're more?
Well, I'm more intuitive, but lately my intuition is not quite as good as it used to be. So I do check things quite carefully lately before making a move. But that can waste time, so you've got to be careful.
So this is the final question, believe it or not. It's the most important question. By now, I'm sure you know me about my sort of like trying to be a comedian. Do you think a king on G1 or a king on G8 or B8 or C1 ever gets bored and wants to take a holiday? What square would it like to travel to? T206 or something else?
T206?
Yeah, well, what square do you think the king wants to travel to if it gets bored?
I think it would like to go to H6, the White King, and so then it allows the Queen to go to G7 checkmate and kill his own opponent's king.
Of course. Now, I'd like for you, thank you very much, International Master, more or less a Grandmaster, for the defeats. I have actually drawn with Keith Arkle. If he's a year or two older than me, he was the European chess champion, and I drew with that Grandmaster. I was 2 pawns up, and I just perpetual checked him. So you've got 1 minute to go.
Right.
So if you close, that'd be great.
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope that you have as well. And I really would look forward to going back to New Zealand. I haven't been for a little while. I hope to get a chance in the future, although it's not going to be for a couple of years now, at least. But I would look forward to that.
Well, I'm sure that the New Zealand public will hear that. And thank you very much. And I'll catch you next time on Facebook.
Indeed. Thanks very much, David. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.